would you want a superpower? And if you did, what would it be? Because I find the whole invisibility one a little bit weird, to be honest.
I think it's flawed. No, it's not flawed.
I just find it creepy.
Yeah,
I don't know why that would be anyone's
being
first
invisible
choice.
would be creepy, yeah. And I'd feel like saying to fly is a bit boring.
To fly's good because you wouldn't have to get the bus ever again.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, obviously, what they never address, though, is can you fly fast? Because what if you can fly, but just really, really slow? That everyone's just walking underneath you anyway.
And I'd feel like the Human Torch is problematic as well. Like setting things alight accidentally.
I do like to be warm, though.
Yeah,
so
no, but
in the winter, that's quite handy, that one.
Like, I wouldn't want to set my house on fire.
Accidentally.
Yeah.
Oh, Jackie.
Yeah, well, sorry.
Just wake up next to a burnt corpse,
Yeah.
The invisibility one, what I have liked recently is the last few films about invisibility, they have been the bad guy.
Yeah.
Because I do think it is a weird one. The flying one...
I think normally as well, the flying is in conjunction with other superpowers.
Yeah,
Like,
you never find someone that just flies,
Yeah,
do you?
you'd be just like, what's your superpower? I can fly.
Yeah.
So you can get out of trouble, so you can run away from danger.
Just go very high.
Yeah.
What if you can't fly? Like, well, I mean, you can fly, which just as in you just go vertical. Because there's a big difference between I can fly and I can soar through the sky.
Just go, just fly.
Go up.
Oh, like, here's the bad guys.
Here's vertical man.
Hello and welcome to Watch It If You Can. My name is Liam.
My name is Dave.
This podcast is all about box sets we've created of our favourite films and TV shows. Some you've seen, some you won't, and others you may never want to watch. However, we can say, if you've never seen Anchorman, well, I'm Ron Burgundy. Go fuck yourself, San Diego. All we want to do is chat on about these films and TV shows we love so dearly, and maybe, just maybe, you should watch it if you can. Dave?
Liam?
How are you?
I'm alright, I'm not too bad. We've missed a week.
We've missed the week that
It's my fault.
that damn coronavirus. It's still knocking around, isn't
It is, yeah. So we had to cancel last week, but we have got a good one, haven't we?
We've got a very good one, and we've been sort of saving this one, haven't we? For I know we've got one more in the box set next week, and it's obvious why it's the last one.
Yeah.
But I think this one we wanted to have in to sort of create other things, other box sets later down the line.
And specials and stuff like
that. So
it
made sense to have this one. So, therefore, the leading question is, Dave, for Watch It If You Can, Box Set 2, Episode 9, what is it?
It's Superman, the movie. We've got to add in the movie because that is the official title, isn't it?
Okay.
So, Superman the movie, it's a 1978 superhero film. If you've never heard of it, I mean, we don't know where you've been if you've never heard of it, but it's based on the character from DC Comics. The movie itself is directed by Richard Donner. It's the origin of Superman. So we do start straight from the beginning. You know, he's a Kryptonian. His real name is Kal-El. Superman himself appeared in American comic books published by DC Comics going back all the way to 1938. And the main plot of the movie is that Jor-El, who's Kal-El's dad, he discovers that the planet's going to be destroyed when its red supergiant sun is going to explode. So to save Kal-El, he sends him on a spaceship to Earth, where because Superman has this kind of dense molecular structure, it will give him super strength and superpowers. And Kal-El himself lands in Smallville, which is in Kansas, and he's found by Jonathan and Martha Kent, who basically raise him as their own, and he then grows up to work for the Daily Planet and becomes the superhero that we all know as Superman.
Great stuff. So, why is it your choice this week, Dave?
I think you touched upon it. It's Boxset 2. We wanted a superhero movie, I think. And I originally wanted to go with Batman from 1989 because that's more from my era.
Yeah.
It was probably the biggest superhero movie at the time when we were growing up. But we really, if you're going to do it properly, you've got to go back. And I think you've got to go back to this movie. This is the first big superhero studio-led movie. There's been versions of Superman before, obviously TV versions, but this is the first big budget studio movie. You know, the tagline was, you know, you'll believe a man can fly. And I think for audiences at that time, they did.
I don't think I've ever actually seen this film as in, and when I'm going to say the word term adult loosely here, if you know what I mean, because I have very brief recollections of a couple of scenes, but I do not remember the film at all. So, in my mind, all Superman films have been blurred into moments and bits. So actually, it's probably the first time I've watched Superman in my life properly the other night.
Oh, really?
That sounds really weird because I know I must have seen it, but there was, I would say, 95% of the film I have no recollection of.
What did you used to do on a bank holiday? Because
I've never...
Saying that, Superman 2 seemed to... I don't know if this is some sort of... I didn't look into this actually, but I don't know if it's some sort of TV studio deal.
This is
Superman 2 was definitely on more than Superman 1.
This is exactly what I was going to mention, because it's really difficult to get all the Superman 1, which we'll come to in the bit later. But yes, and because literally, as soon as you said it, and I've thought about it before, I think I've definitely seen the one with Richard Pryor is 2. Definitely seen that one multiple times.
Sorry, no, that's free.
That's free. So yeah, I don't think the first one was shown that often on film, on TV, and it would be terrestrial TV back in our day as well. Like, it would be 4 channels.
Sky Movies shows Superman 2 quite a bit, and then I was surprised because when I was looking to find this, the Superman 1 wasn't just readily on the movies.
Yeah.
But you're not a big rewatcher of movies anyway, whereas I am. Yeah. So Superman is one, and I think with having the kids as well, you tend to introduce them to things, don't you? So they would have watched Superman at some point. You would have put them on.
So, but no, I'd possibly say it's the first time I've properly watched it.
As an adult,
I would say
just fully.
I don't know, because I virtually have no recollection of any of the film.
We wouldn't have seen this. I seen Superman 4 on the cinema because
it's way
that
beyond,
was kind of our age, but we weren't born when this came out.
But like I said, I've never watched the Superman movies since I've been like a teenager onwards.
Yeah.
So it would have only been as a kid, and it would have only been on TV. I've got a feeling now, for some reason, what we've just said, 1 never seemed to be on. It was always 2, 3 and 4.
Do you think a little bit of it was that it's more to do with the character? Because maybe it comes back to Batman came out in 89.
Yeah.
And like, as we got a little bit older, like films like Blade came out, and more adult, or what felt like adult characters that maybe you didn't revisit Superman.
I'm going to be brutally honest. I'm not the biggest Superman fan.
No?
I'm not a fan of the comics. I'm not a fan of him. I find him quite boring and quite...
Is it because he's too perfect?
Yes. He's like... And I find it really strange. I'm at odds with myself here, because Captain America is probably my favourite Avenger, and yet the parallels between the pair of them are so striking. I find him a little bit sanctimonious. But you could say that about Captain America, but I like Captain America. So it's an eternal struggle I have in myself.
It's hard to make the character interesting, I think, because he is perfect, isn't he? I know obviously there's flaws around, you know, there's ways to weaken him and stuff like that. But as a character, he can fly, he is super fast, he's got X-ray vision.
And it's the no smoking thing and all that, because do you know what I mean? And he doesn't drink when he flies.
But that idea, that is what he's about, isn't it? That is the character.
One of the questions I'm going to ask is, I feel like because we're already there now, is what does Superman represent to you? What does he mean to you?
To me personally,
Yeah.
To me personally, he is the iconic superhero. He is what every kid should want to be. And I think now with movies, it's all about finding the flaw within that superhero, isn't it? You know, with like Tony Stark, you know, that has the drink problem, doesn't he? I'm trying to think of some other kind of examples, but even with Batman now, it's like, you know, it's more darker than it ever kind of was, wasn't it? And it was Adam West when we were kids. So I think for me, he's the one that kids should want to be. You shouldn't really want to be Batman.
You know, I
want to be Batman because you want the Batmobile, and it's like, more realistic.
Batman literally beats people up for fun.
The thing is, you can't be Superman because obviously the bit everyone sort of forgets because he's so linked to America and, you know, Kansas. He's an alien.
Yeah,
everyone sort of skips over the fact that he's an alien.
This is
an illegal alien, if you want to call him that as well.
Yeah, he skipped the border. He got over Trump's border. He just jumped over his wall. But another question I was going to have is: does Superman mean different for us being British than he does for America? Has he come to represent America and a certain time period in America or a certain set of ideals?
Yeah,
I know we're getting a little bit deep now, but this is stuff I've been...
85 in April, did we say? Yeah, I think that was the big anniversary, wasn't it? So he's been around for a while.
Now, he popped up right before the Second World War, which obviously the rise of fascism in Europe, and I think he became famous because there was a comment where he actually went and beat up Hitler or something as well, didn't he? Am I making that up?
Captain America punched Hitler.
Was that Captain America?
Yeah. There's a version of Captain America where he punches Hitler, isn't he?
But I think it's interesting that in times of war, because the whole world was in critical situation in the late 30s, you know what I mean? America got dragged into the Second World War reluctantly in the early 40s, but they still knew what was going on. So that gives that air of...
He's tied in with the American ideal, isn't he?
Yeah.
Of this is the perfect person stuff. Whether that's translated around the world as much, I don't know. I think you're right. Certainly when we were in school, Superman wasn't... I don't think people really had the dressed as Superman as much as maybe Batman and some of the other things as well. But then having said that,
I had recollections of running home from school and we put your hood over your head and it'd be like Superman with me cloak, but it was just a hood over your head with your parka. So I do remember running around saying was Superman.
I think everyone wanted the powers as well, though, didn't they?
Yeah.
I think everyone wanted to be able to fly and everyone wanted to be able to catch bullets and everyone wanted the superhero side to it, but whether necessarily people wanted to be him, I don't know. That's a different question, isn't it? Yeah,
I just find it really interesting because, like I said, I don't think I'm going to say I've never seen a film as an adult, as in the fact I've sat and watched the whole film. Because don't forget, if I watched it as a kid, probably when you're a kid, you only watch 20 minutes or so and you go off and play Star Wars upstairs.
Unless you've gone to see it. Yeah.
So I don't think you really fully comprehend and take on a film until you're at least 8 or 9 or something like that. So I don't think I've seen it. So watching it again for the first time, it's like, oh, what struck me is how quite adult it was in bits, and then there was the sort of little goofy bits in it as well. But we'll come back to that a little bit later. Okay, so let's go back on track with our questions. Who's in it, Dave? And what else will we know them from?
So I've gone with the 4 main characters. So Christopher Reeve is our Superman / Clark Kent. Sadly, 1995, Reeve broke his neck when he was thrown from a horse during the equestrian competition, and he did sadly pass away in 2004, and he was only 52.
Yeah.
It's so sad, isn't it? This was his first real movie. He did go on to star in 3 more Superman films. He was a voice in Frasier.
He was, yeah.
Just linking to one of our previous podcasts. He did appear in 2 episodes of Smallville as well.
Yes.
Which I thought was a nice touch. So Smallville, if you've never heard of it, is a TV show.
So I tell you, that was post-accident as well, wasn't it? Cause,
he plays a doctor in a wheelchair at the
he played
at the
it.
time. He was in a film the one that I remember, the one that stands out for me. There's a film with Burt Reynolds and Kathleen Turner called Switching Channels.
Oh, don't know.
In 1988, which I don't remember very well, but I do remember that I liked it. But he didn't really obviously he died at 52.
Yeah.
And he didn't really, Superman was his first sort of major film. So you're only talking about a really small career, aren't you?
And it absolutely catapulted him as well. I completely forgot he was in Remains of the Day with Anthony Hopkins.
I've seen that, yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen that. I love that film. That's pretty much put Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thompson on the map, that film. Fantastic film. He plays the guy who buys the house or something like that, who Anthony Hopkins is the butler for. I did see a film called, when you look them down list, that looks really interesting. Death Trap, 1982 film, directed by Sidney Lumet, with Michael Caine. That looks really cool.
I've seen that. It doesn't ring a bell if I have.
Every week when we do a podcast, I try and find something I've never seen before. I'll get around to watching that. It's going on my list, but the problem is the list is just getting so big so quick,
Especially with the episodes and so on, because we talk about at least 4 or 5 actors every time as well. Marlon Brando is Jor-El, who everyone knows from The Godfather and from Apocalypse Now. He's got 8 Oscar nominations and won 2. He won for On the Waterfront, and he did win for The Godfather, which he declined.
He did, yes.
He was protesting Hollywood's portrayal of Native Americans in film, so he didn't accept the Oscar for The Godfather. But you've got to say that's his best performance, probably.
He's an absolute beast. He
is, but I mean, if you read the comments, even Christopher Reeve's comments, he was so lazy.
He was renowned for basically he was one of the laziest actors in Hollywood.
There was a few things apparently I read that he did. One was that when we rehearsed and he was saying, should we put the cameras on because it might capture something, and that was just, and then they did use that scene. That was his little trick of getting them to film the scenes. And his lines, he didn't learn his lines.
No, he's never been.
No. So in the scene where the baby's in the ship, apparently the lines are on the baby's nappy. And he's just reading the lines, and his excuse was that it's fresh if he doesn't know the lines. But Christopher Reeve come out and just said he's just phoning it in, basically. But he's brilliant in it.
He's amazing. He's just pure charisma.
Yeah.
Whenever you see him on screen, apparently, I don't know if you've seen Apocalypse Now, and what's even more interesting is the documentary behind the scenes. He's batshit crazy as well.
Oh, he's nuts. And he earned so much money for this as well.
Oh, he did, because he took a percentage as well.
He took a percentage, so he ended up with 14 million for 10 minutes of screen time. Yeah. Which is just crazy.
And apparently they had a guy whose job it was just to get him out of the trailer.
Really?
Yes.
Just paying someone
was there
Marlon's
to get him out of the trailer for his scenes. And I just, he's pure Hollywood though.
Did you have any films?
No, it's weird, man.
He's really hasn't done a lot of films, has he?
No, and
great films anyway.
Well, the problem is they're all 50s and 60s ones, which I know
we haven't seen. We should see.
We were brought up on 70s movies. In the 80s, because do you know what I mean? And then we chose to watch 80s films as we got a bit older. But I feel like 60s and 50s, which was his time, don't really remember.
Because the films I think we've probably seen them, or certainly I've seen them in, is Island of Dr. Moreau, which was pretty awful with Val Kilmer, and The Score with Robert De Niro, which just wasn't a particularly good film. So
it's
the recommendation's The Godfather, isn't it? If you've not seen The Godfather, just go watch The Godfather. Margot Kidder, who plays Lois Lane, she also appeared in 2 episodes of Smallville as well.
Yes, I did know.
She's worked on loads of TV shows. She's in one, just hundreds of credits, but all little kind of appearances on TV shows. So I didn't really have any recommendations.
I did notice and as you don't. If you don't go into all the cast, but a lot of the cast seems to have appeared in Murder, She Wrote and Tales from the Crypt. I noticed, which I know Margot Kidder did appear in both as well. I remember her from her cameo in Maverick.
The Mel Gibson movie?
Yeah, which is also directed by Richard Donner.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
So I think that's where he quite likes, because there was a couple of cameos from his previous films in it as well.
I haven't seen that for
But
a long
apart
time.
from that, yeah, I'm a bit like, I don't really know Margot Kidder from much else.
No, we'll move on then to Gene Hackman. Now, he plays Lex Luthor. I've only noted a couple because I think we did Gene Hackman in Crimson Tide, didn't we?
Yeah.
So I don't want to repeat all the ones we did. So a couple I picked out, which I don't think we mentioned. Behind Enemy Lines with Owen Wilson.
No.
We didn't mention that at Crimson Tide. That's a really good film. I don't think I said The Firm with Tom Cruise. And if I didn't, I should have, because that's an amazing film. I know you're not a big Tom Cruise fan, but that's an amazing film. Also, as well, he has a cameo as the blind man in Young Frankenstein.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
You haven't seen Young Frankenstein?
No.
Oh,
Who else is in it?
It's the Mel Brooks with Gene Wilder and the dad. I've forgotten the dad's name from Everyone Loves Raymond. Peter.
Oh, who was in The Monsters?
Yes.
Oh, I think I have seen it.
You'll have seen Young Frankenstein at some point.
Yeah.
He only has a little cameo, but he's amazing in it.
I picked out a game I was trying to do not double over. I forgot he was in White Earp. I think he played White Earp's dad.
He is in White Earp.
Yeah, which is, but again, it was just another excuse to mention the fact he's in The Unforgiven, which is just a great film. But yeah, I would recommend Gene Hackman in a film called Crimson Tide.
And I'd recommend a podcast about that episode as well.
Oh my god, it's meta in on meta.
So they're the only actors I wanted to bring up. You've got a couple of others, like honourable mentions, haven't you?
Yeah, I was just picking through because I enjoy doing this a little bit when doing research. The guy who played Otis, who was Lex Luthor's fumbling sidekick, and he was a sidekick, was played by an old school character actor called Ned Beatty. And I was trying to go, what do I know him from? I remember him.
Deliverance.
He was in Deliverance as well. God, he played Ed Connor in Roseanne, which was John Goodman's dad in Roseanne.
Didn't he?
But he was only in actually about 6 episodes. But if you remember, in the first series, they had a friend called Crystal, and his dad ended up going with her and having pregnant. So it was all a bit
right, all a thing.
Because Dan and his dad had a very sort of difficult relationship, but he did have a reoccurring part. I think he was in about 6 episodes, but that's where I remember him. And he was in a film called Just Cause with Sean Connery. Flashback to last week's episode. Just thought, not last week's.
I was going to say, a few weeks.
Also, we've already mentioned him on the podcast before, Terence Stamp. Very, very blink and you miss it part, but he's actually really good in a bit. He plays Zod, General Zod in it, doesn't he?
We're only talking about Superman, the movie, the first one here, aren't we? Obviously, it sets up the second one.
But he's really good in it. Yeah. But I did read that he originally offered the part to Christopher Lee to play General Zod, but at the point Christopher Lee just moved to Hollywood, so he didn't have to pay taxes in Britain. And because it was filmed in Pinewood Studios, he didn't take the part because the taxman in Britain would have took all his money.
And part of the reason part was found in Britain because of Brando, wasn't it?
Yes.
Because he couldn't film in Italy for some reason. There's a whole thing.
That's the last
as well.
time
He's not allowed
Paris. Yeah.
But if you're going to mention Terence Stamp, you've got to mention Young Guns.
Young Guns, again, a previous episode of ours, isn't it?
Watch Young Guns and listen to the episode.
After Crimson Tide, makes we're not bothered. It doesn't really matter. And also the most random piece of casting is Larry Lamb, who most people will know from EastEnders, and of course Gavin and Stacey, plays a part of a reporter. I don't think he actually has a line in it, but he is in a couple of scenes where you see him floating around the office.
He's in the newsroom.
I was like, Larry Lamb's in. And randomly, he's in Superman 3 as well, where he plays a miner. I'm like,
that's it. So he got sacked from the newspaper and went on to be a miner,
And I don't think I mentioned it, but Richard Donner, who went on to create the Lethal Weapon franchise, and also the Goonies.
Yeah.
Now, just randomly, I don't know why. No, we've spoken about this. No, the way your phone on Instagram and Twitter throws up things. I swear to God, you've just been watching or talking about. So, I was on Twitter before, and one of the guys I follow put up this camcorder footage of. So if you remember, Steven Spielberg produced the Goonies, didn't he?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Richard Donner, when he'd finished making it, was like basically said, been the year filming with these kids, I've had enough. He said, I'm going on holiday. Literally the day he finished filming, he packed his bags and went to Hawaii, somewhere like that. So for a prank, Steven Spielberg hired a plane, took all the kids and got them to turn up in his hotel, and then filmed them as all the kids run in, and Richard Donner sat there and you could just see him go, lovely. And it's like, I was like, Steven Spielberg, you little, I just thought it was
That is good.
It's a really good footage as well, like, and it's quite cute to see the kids, and obviously, you know, because I think it was quite a big moment. It was a big film as well, wasn't it?
Well, Richard Donner, I mean, he wasn't like exactly first choice for this. This went through all sorts of iterations, which we'll come to, and all sorts of people linked to it. A funny story I liked about Richard Donner was with Gene Hackman. Did you see that one about the moustache?
The moustache, yes.
So Gene Hackman apparently didn't want to shave his moustache off. So Richard Donner said, well, look, I'll shave mine off in like solidarity if you do it. And then when Gene Hackman turned up with his moustache shaved off, Richard Donner just peeled his off because it was fake. So I love that story. Another film, though. Obviously, Lethal Weapon movies and Goonies. We did Scrooged as well.
You did. He had quite
like
a little
Christmas movie.
He had quite a good run for a couple of years. Not quite the standard of
Rob Reiner.
Yeah, but he had
some really top.
Do you know what I mean?
Movies,
So
yeah.
to do this. Now, the more I've read about it is he pretty much filmed Superman and Superman 2 back to back.
Yeah, that was the deal, yeah. So that's why, and I was going to ask you this as we go along, but I don't think, have we ever seen a film where the sequel's set up at the very start of the first film? Because that whole opening with Zod, that pays off then, because the sequel is all about Zod and the other two coming back, isn't it? I don't think there's ever been, because it could have flopped.
Yeah.
It could easily have come out.
Because basically, Richard Donner, he filmed Superman 1 and 2 pretty much as one.
But then he got sacked.
Yeah.
He got sacked from 2, didn't he? And it kind of got re-edited, didn't it?
Well, a lot of it was reshot from what I can gather. But apparently there's a Richard Donner cut.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Zack Snyder all over again, isn't he?
Yeah, same character again. Obviously, Richard Donner, passed away in 2021, and they are looking at doing another Lethal Weapon movie, which I think they did say originally they wouldn't do one without him, but I think because of that nostalgia thing of everything's coming back, isn't it? With Cobra Kai in it and stuff like that being a huge, I think.
And then the TV series, I actually quite enjoyed it. I think
I never watched it. Was it Marlon Wayans?
Yeah, I watched like the first two. I think a couple of series. It was one of them I got quite took in for a series or two, and then it sort of like after, because there's 20 odd episodes of the series, it all becomes. But the characters and the actors, it was quite enjoyable. It was quite a good retake on it. Right then, so there's who's in it. What about your favourite character?
It's hard to pick anyone but the man himself.
Really?
Yeah, it's got to be him. It's got to be Superman, I think.
I think he's a bit of an idiot. I do.
Well, let's go
go
into it. So, I mean, I think it's more Christopher Reeve, to be honest. I'm picking Christopher Reeve's performance. I think we were talking about changing this question to what's your favourite performance?
Yes.
Because sometimes, like when it comes to City of God, it was hard to say.
Oh, we love these psychopath.
Yeah, it was hard to say that was
killers.
your favourite character because you hated them really, but the performance.
Yeah.
So, but initially it was meant to be an A-list actor for Superman. Even before Donner was hired as director, and some of the names that have been mentioned then. So Robert Redford was offered a big large sum to do it, but he felt he was too famous. Burt Reynolds turned it down.
Imagine Burt Reynolds playing Superman.
It would have been interesting. Stallone was interested, apparently. Paul Newman was offered his choice of roles. He was offered Superman, Lex Luthor, or Jor-El for $4 million, but he ended up turning down all three. Some other names that were originally discussed, and I think this is even way prior to Richard Donner, the original ones, was Muhammad Ali.
That would have been really interesting.
Imagine that. Al Pacino.
Interesting.
Obviously, this would have been in the 70s. James Caan.
Yes.
Steve McQueen. Clint Eastwood.
That's the one I saw, and I was
Clint's really interesting.
Clint, I think
in the 70s as well, because he's got the build, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman.
They need to have him stacked up on boxes.
I don't know where that came from. Olympic champion Bruce Jenner auditioned for the title role, and Patrick Wayne, who was the son of John Wayne, was actually cast.
Who's in Young Guns?
Yes. He had to leave. So John Wayne unfortunately got stomach cancer and he dropped out. But Patrick Wayne was originally the original cast.
But you cannot imagine Superman is Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve is Superman. And Christopher Reeve is Clark Kent. Clark Kent is Christopher Reeve. And so I think when you come back, when you say about the performance, the fact he plays the two characters as well.
Yeah, because when they decided to cast an unknown, it was a casting director called Lynn Stylemaster who first suggested Christopher Reeve, but it was Donna and the producers said he's too young and he's too skinny.
Yeah.
So he trained with David Prowse. David Prowse, who was Darth Vader.
The original Darth Vader.
So apparently there was over 200 unknown actors that auditioned for Superman, and other names. There's even more names linked because obviously it's a huge part. Arnie wanted it. James Brolin wanted it. Christopher Walken was linked. Nick Nolte, I think, is a really interesting one. Nick Nolte in the 70s, because again, he's such a big guy.
Big fella, yeah.
John Voight, Chris Christopherson and Charles Bronson were also considered, and Warren Beatty was offered it and turned it down.
See, I think for the very reason why I don't like Superman, most of them could not have pulled it off, because they're all complex people. I think Christopher Reeve was a lovely guy as well, from all accounts, wasn't he?
Yeah, so amazing.
And I know it's like actors act, but it's not the case with when a role transcends everything, you become there's a blur between the actor and the role, but you know it's like, you know, like these big roles, it's you know, you're not typecast, but he will only ever be Superman, and he was Superman.
Yeah, and it's not a bad role to be typecast against. No. And it does, to be honest, it does annoy me when you hear actors saying like, I don't want to do like superhero movies or whatever, don't be typecast, because I think that's a jealousy thing from my point of view, because I think, why wouldn't you want, I wouldn't mind walking down the street and going, that guy was James Bond, you know, that guy was Batman, that guy was whatever, because like, we're just normal people.
You mentioned it, like, I got a bit of, not annoyed, but Daniel Craig, he was always, I'll never do one of these Bond, and then I'll do one more Bond movie. I'm like, mate, are you're James Bond? Do you know what I mean? It's like,
just do it, take the money and do it.
And it's not even the money, you're James flipping Bond.
I know.
It's like the coolest person in the world, and he was almost like, but again,
flipping Toby.
It made the last couple of Bond movies, again, it's what I've just said before, where the actor melt into the role a little bit. He was bringing something to me. He was, by the last Bond film, he was done with Bond, and it made that performance better for it.
Probably, you can, and probably obviously I don't agree with the ending, but with the ending of it, probably, well, we know he had a big say in that, didn't he? And I think from day one he said he'd do it if that was the end result was, you know, he gets killed off.
But so I think with that, I definitely think
Christopher Reeve is just perfect, and I think the best quote, and it's a bit of a long quote, but I'll read it out, from Kill Bill with Quentin Tarantino. All he says is, Superman didn't become Superman. Superman was born Superman. When Superman wakes up in the morning, he's Superman. His alter ego is Clark Kent. His outfit with the big red S, that's the blanket he was wrapped in as a baby when the Kents found him. Those are his clothes. What Kent wears, the glasses, the business suit, that's the costume. That's the costume Superman wears to blend with us. Clark Kent is how Superman views us. And what the characteristics of Clark Kent are, he's weak and he's unsure of himself and he's a coward. And Clark Kent is Superman's critique of the whole human race. Oof. And that's perfect, isn't it? It is, because when we talk about the Clark Kent and the Superman bit, the Clark Kent is the alter ego, isn't it? Everyone talks about Superman being like, you know, the Superman is him. He's Superman.
It's not like Batman has to become Batman.
Yeah,
by
he's
putting on the
already
suit.
Superman. Yeah, he puts the Clark Kent suit on to become Clark Kent.
It's the opposite to everyone, isn't it? It is interesting. I was reading about there was someone was saying they were on set, and there was a moment where he walked across set, and it was like all the women just went, ooh. And then in another moment he seen him walk through as Clark Kent and no one batted an eyelid, because he said it wasn't just the glasses, because you think it's a terrible costume, it's a terrible it's how can this, like, I wear glasses, I put glasses on, take glasses off, oh my god, I didn't recognise you there, it's like just a pair of glasses.
But this is why Christopher Reeve is perfect, because the whole performance, he's like he's clumsy,
and you notice the
he's
slump
awkward.
shoulders as well, and
he doesn't make himself as tall as what Superman is. And I think that whole question of, like what you just said there, how do people realise it's not him? It is that thing what you just said, it's how he holds himself. And I think you could see Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent, and at that time not think, well, that's the superhero, the Superman. No, if you really immerse yourself in the film, because obviously this is pre video phones. There's no real good photos of Superman. No one really knew, unless you've seen him on the street, you didn't really know what he looks like in the film. So this idea of like, oh, it's really stupid, people don't know he's Clark Kent. Well, because no one's really seen Superman properly after, unless he's saved you personally. And then what's the chances of you meeting Clark Kent and stuff? So that's why I think Superman, a little bit of comeback to James Bond, is so hard to do in the modern day. Because Superman now would just be click. Someone would take 1 million pictures of him, and then someone would analyse it, and someone would find the day, like, this guy works for the Daily Planet, and he's 6 foot odd, and he looks a bit like him. Whereas in the 70s, it's much more believable that no one knows. But ultimately, if it comes back to some of those actors we were talking about, if Arnie had played Superman and Clark Kent, we'd have went.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. Even some of those, and there's great actors were mentioned.
But
Christopher Reeve.
I think you've got the bit that I don't like about Superman is that sanctimonious, that he's so good and virtuous and all that. Not many of them other actors can do that. So
he just pulls him off, doesn't he? So when you ask me who's my favourite character, I'm still going to say I still think it's Superman. I still think it's Clark Kent. But ultimately, it's the performance of Christopher Reeve. Without that, the film probably flops, doesn't it?
Definitely. Now, I'm going to counteract that a little bit. I've gone for character, not necessarily performance, but I think Lois is really interesting character. Bear in mind, it's 78. Most females in films at this point are literally just there for the gratification of men. She's not. She's actually, although there's the love story between them, she grounds him, and she actually, he breaks the rules for him as well, doesn't he? So that bit we were saying,
out of the Clark Kent and Lois Lane, she's the brave one.
Yes,
isn't she?
When you get mugged in the street corner,
she's the one that stands up to the mugger, isn't she? And even if you think in the jumping a little bit ahead to the second one, when the bad guys lose the powers and she punches the girl and stuff, I think where the modern films have gone wrong is they've forgotten what's so good about the Lois Lane from the 70s version.
She was, to be a reporter in that time, she asked questions, she was inquisitive, she was feisty. You know what I mean? She wasn't particularly glamorous, good-looking actress as well. So do you know what I mean? It was downplayed a little bit. It was a little bit Middle Girl Next Door. I just think it's a really interesting role, and I don't think you don't have Superman unless you've got Lois.
No.
He sort of made that in a film, because he never appeared as Superman until after he'd met Lois. Lois had and we don't. That's the bit I wasn't unsure about, because
it's quite long in the film. You forget, I think, that
because obviously, and this is what's like I said. I'm going to say again, I don't think I've seen a film fully since. So it's almost like 3 different films. There's the bit on Krypton or whatever, which is which is the context of where it is. Then there's the bit in Kansas. Now, I liked a little bit where when he was a teenager, he got a bit jealous and then was, and his dad sort of pulling him up and went, "What are you doing? You know, you got to
Yeah,
be careful."
yeah.
And I was like, Dad.
He races ahead and
Yeah,
stuff.
and I was like,
Starts
that's the
cheekily using
level.
his
I
powers.
wanted to see a little bit more of that in him.
But again, I think that a lot of that comes down to he can't show his powers, can he? Because
No.
you know this comes from his parents of wanting to just protect him, don't they? And you're right. Lois is, you know, you obviously have Lana Lang from the earlier ones, don't you? The earlier scenes and stuff. But Lois is
the synonymous
one.
together that are it's Superman and Lois. They are so important together. Okay, then. So moving on to next question, which we always ask at this point, is what about favourite scene?
The whole opening with the Krypton scenes, because apparently this was the most expensive film ever made at that point.
Well,
and I think it is on the screen. I think you can tell that the opening 10-15 minutes.
Well, apparently the cost of the end credits was like the average price of a film in them days. Just a bit when you did the credits, it was like, which blew my mind.
Says it all, doesn't it? So that is great. I do like the scene in the alley that we just mentioned, because that's the first sort of time we see the older Clark Kent actually use his sort of powers, isn't it, when he catches the bullet?
Yeah,
that's great. I am torn, to be honest. I do think the first time he rips his shirt off and saves Lois in the helicopter, that probably is my favourite scene, because it's just the build up to it, isn't it? You know, like sort of Lois is in trouble, Clark just comes walking out, and everyone's already there and screaming, and it's the music that once the music kicks in and stuff, isn't it? And it gets going. So that's probably, I think it's a perfect action scene. I think it's an introduction to the
helicopter scene it still stands up today.
Yeah, and it's very practical effects and stuff, isn't it, as well?
So that sort of leads straight into I really enjoyed the dam busting bit where he saves the dam when he pushes the rock down.
Yeah.
Only because, and I could spot it a mile off, it's models. And we're at that time, late 70s, when models were still... The technique to make these model sets were amazing. You know, you have to look at Star Wars. It's
all
the same
ships
era.
And everything, yeah.
But I really enjoyed that bit where you saw the water coming down and he was saving the water, and the bit where he flies into the San Andreas fault and then pushes it back up as well. About 97, it doesn't look bad.
I think practical effects will always look better. Even when you watch some of the older things, and you can tell it's practical, it still feels more like real, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even though you know it's a model or something, I think you just appreciate the fact that that's something that they've made. It's like if you look at like Grogu in Mandalorian, I would much prefer that than that could have easily been a CGI character, but it's not. Everyone loves it because it's something you can go and
we
pick
appreciate
up yourself.
You see the limitations of having a puppet, because we know it's a puppet. Sorry, guys, but I know what you're saying. There's something
it's more tangible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's there, and the actors are interacting with it, and blah blah. Yeah,
you know they're not looking at a tennis ball.
Yeah,
you know who's there.
It's normally Sean Gunn, isn't it? With All right then. So there's your favourite character. What about music? Need I say anything about this?
Oh, so the score of Superman is composed and conducted by John Williams, performed by the London Symphony Orchestra. If you don't know John Williams, you will, because he did Jaws, he did Star Wars, he does the Indiana Jones movies. I just think it's the best piece of music is the main theme. You only need to hear and everyone knows. You know what it is, don't you? You know that's Superman. It's the same with like the Indiana Jones theme and Jaws. As soon as you hear those little bars of music, I think he's 90. I think he's 90 this year, is he?
Yeah,
he's just done the last Indiana Jones movie. He did say, I think he said he retired, but he will come back if Spielberg asked him.
Yeah.
The music for this is just perfect.
It's unbelievable. It's just... John Williams is... I think he's got to be the greatest film composer ever.
It's him and Hans Zimmer are the two that really, really stand out for me anyway. But John Williams is just picks out because you're talking about decades worth and iconic stuff, isn't it?
Right, okay then. So what about which part of the movie would you change? Is there anything you don't like about it?
I think I don't think a lot of the stuff with Lex Luthor and the Underground lair quite works. I don't think it's sort of in keeping with the rest of the film. I'm not a big fan of what was the sidekick? Sorry.
Otis.
Otis. It's a comedy thing, and it feels a little bit forced by the studio to have something a little bit light-hearted. So I would have made Lex maybe a bit more less comical.
Yeah, literally, I put down the 2 bits where they sneak into the missiles. I think are so ridiculous.
But then I do really love the prison escape scene in Superman 2. So this sort of redeems it a bit. But it's a very comical relationship. It's a very Dastardly Muttley type thing for me.
The bit why I particularly mentioned the sneaking into missiles, because it pissed me off a little bit. Because this is the army with a missile, and all he did was hide in a bush. And Otis snuck behind him and climbed into a missile and set the course to it. And then not only that, because he did it wrong, he went back the next day and did it again. I'm like...
Yeah, the comical elements are obviously there because it's a family film, so totally, maybe I'm just being a grumpy old man.
No,
we're grumpy old men then.
I'm watching it with basically fresh eyes. I thought it wasn't needed.
Yeah.
I thought it was...
Do you want me other one?
Go on.
Because it's the controversial one.
Oh.
It's the circle in the world and reversing Earth's rotation to save Lois. And there's loads of arguments online as to whether does he fly back that fast that he goes back in time the way kind of the Flash can do it. But it's not. He does reverse the Earth. You physically see the Earth is reversing and it puts everything back. And it's just like, it's just so... I'm not saying the movie should be scientific. It's a movie about an alien who can fly, who's got superpowers. But it's just that one scene where you just think, who come up with that idea?
It wouldn't reverse time.
It makes no sense.
All that would happen would be like people would go... Instead of going dark and night, it would be going light, and vice versa. It doesn't. I thought it was.
It just doesn't make sense. It never has. I think that's. To be honest, I don't think I'm the only one.
And then also, I was watching it going, well, okay, so we reversed the time to stop her getting crushed in the fault, but the dam was still gonna go, but he didn't go back and stop the dam.
He could have went further if you.
So it's I thought it was really poor right now.
It seems a little bit lazy. It seems almost like, well, what do we do? And like, well, what if he just flies around the world?
I felt like he could have just saved Lois, and actually she wasn't dead. He just got it. Would have worked exactly the same.
The scene when he finds her dead, like Christopher Reeve is amazing in that scene, isn't he? And I think it's like someone wrote like a really good scene of, Lois is dead and Superman finds her and he has this big breakdown, and I think that's a really great idea, and then someone goes, well, how do you bring her back? Just science and stuff,
do
this.
I thought there was a few.
I think as a kid I probably loved it. I probably went, that's amazing, Superman's flying around the world and super how fast he is, and that's brilliant. But I think watching it as an adult now, you go,
yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. But I'd still say the bit about the missiles pissed me off because it just annoyed me. I think
the 70s was a different time where you could just walk onto a missile base. It was no problem. Tell you what you had about.
It was the fact he just hid in a bush and stopped.
That was the whole evil dastardly plan.
No, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to go to the section where it's new for Boxset 2. It's the mystery box. Oh, yeah. So I've prepared a few questions for Dave, so when I'm hosting and vice versa when Dave's hosting. So Dave, there's a couple of questions over there. Pop your hand in.
I'm going to go with not that one, this one. Right. I'll tell you what, I won't look. I'll hand it to you. You can read it out.
Right, okay. Okay. I remember writing this one now as well. How would you introduce the lead character of your choice into Doctor Who?
Oh, would I bring Superman into Doctor Who? That's weird. Well, so
now this is, I purposely put this one in because I know you're a Doctor Who fan.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Doctor Who fan, so
it would have been,
you'd asked me this question, I'd be like, I don't care.
So the episode would all be about Doctor Who lands on Krypton at the time it's going to blow up. And the whole thing with Doctor Who is he can't really interfere and stuff, and things are set. So I think he's there, but I think Doctor Who helps Jarrell build the ship.
Or does he take baby Superman?
Yeah, maybe he was never in the ship.
Yeah.
And he takes him, yeah. I think that'll be the episode. I think he's there. He can't interfere. He can't stop Krypton exploding. And something happens with the ship, and he can't send him. So Doctor Who says, I'll take him in the TARDIS. You send the ship as the distraction, because obviously, you know, they want to... yeah, maybe that would work. That would work, I think. So it wouldn't be the oldest... It wouldn't be Superman as he meeting Superman now.
Yeah,
it would be... Yeah, Doctor Who's on Krypton.
See, because I don't watch Doctor Who, I knew when I wrote this question, I thought, I don't really know what to do on this one. I'm going to sound really uneducated and Doctor Whoian.
I'll correct you. Go on.
I would like it to be Superman as a baddie, because you know that's the bit I remember. Which film is it where he goes rogue?
That's Superman 3.
That's funny enough. That's the one bit I always think about. That's the bit.
Fight.
So I would go back to that. I would have basically Doctor Who and Superman have to square off at some point, and then he realised that actually, you know, they could both need each other to accomplish whatever they both want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the idea of Superman going rogue and
being the bad guy.
Yeah, I really like. I know, obviously, in the later ones as well, he went into that story.
Yeah.
But that, when I think of Superman, the original films as a kid, that's the bit I do, and that says more about me. What I've just said, like, do you know what I mean?
And they're all blending into one.
Yeah, and also the bit I remember is when Superman goes bad, because doesn't he go? Isn't he drunk or something? Because he's flying, he starts to get like a bit.
Yeah, so when he's the bad Superman, he's in the barn, he's flicking the peas, and smashing all the bottles. Yeah, then he ends up, he rips into two and fights like the Clark. Well, he's just a Clark Kent, but a good version.
You see, that's the Superman I liked. I was like, oh,
the darker version.
Yeah, he's got beef. I'm like, that's more interesting. Okay, then, what about impact of Superman?
So it only had a 55 million budget, but that was at the time ridiculous amount.
Ouch.
It went on to make 300.5 million. The impression really is probably the impression it's having even to this day, which is Kevin Feige's quoted as saying, when they're making a new Marvel movie that's going to be an origin story, this is the template. Superman the movie is the film that they sit down and watch again, and this is where they pull from, basically. And you can see that when you watch the Marvel films.
It's strange. I was thinking about this last night after I watched it. It's an origin movie that sort of skips the actual origin of Superman, because, like, it's what you were saying, well, he's always Superman. We get the backstory of how he came to Earth. We got the whole bit as a child.
Yeah.
And then he just turned up as Superman in the day itself. We don't actually see him take to the... No, do you know what I mean?
You mean there's a gap of kind of that like that Batman moment of that first time of going out, putting on the suit and doing it. We skipped the origin, if that makes sense. But it's still a fascinating way of telling the story, because it is almost like there's three distinct parts of the film, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? There's the Krypton bit, there's the Kansas bit where he's a kid, which I really loved, by the way. And then the bit from the 70s, which is the modern day bit. I know what you're saying, but although it's an origin film, it does skip over the bit of like him moving to work for the
and actually what point does he decide to become a superhero? And you know, like it only seems to be once he's met Lois that he then decides to go out and arrest bad people and do stuff. Did he not do that before?
I suppose that was the argument with Smallville. Did you ever watch Smallville?
Not really.
So Smallville ran for 10, I think it was 10 seasons.
It was.
And you never seen him in the suit. So the very last episode is him flying away, and he is in the suit. But I think you only sort of see the boots. So it's 10 seasons of building up to him becoming Superman, and then you never actually got to see Tom Welling be Superman, which is a bit like disappointing.
In the film,
really, but
he leaves Kansas as after the death of his father, was the guy who brought him up, and he heads off to, is it like the North Pole or whatever, and then where his
Fortress Solitude,
of Solitude, which effects wise for the time still looks actually
brilliant.
It still looks really good. And then he was Superman there. You saw him because it's what you said. He was always Superman. There isn't a costume. That's him.
Yeah, and don't forget though, there's the whole thing of when he's arriving as a baby, he's getting all that information fed into him, isn't it? And when he's at the Fortress Solitude, he has all the what do you call the little ice things that give him all the information. So we understand he's learning, isn't he? And he's learning all the time what it means to be like the better man, basically. But I know what you mean. You're filling in the gaps yourself, aren't you, with that information?
I don't dislike it. Do you know what I mean? But it was like, although it's an origin movie, it's an origin without a bit of an origin bit missing. It's
what's so good about the new Spider-Man movies. We don't need to see Peter Parker getting bit again. We don't need to see that first time he does it. It just dives straight in. We know the character's inside out. This is an 85-year-old character. This
is my bit of thing with Batman, with Warner Bros. I think they've flogged Batman to death a little bit lately, and I'm like, don't get me wrong, Christopher Nolan's trilogy is unbelievable. It's amazing feat of filmmaking, but it didn't seem that long before we had the previous ones, and then he reintroduced him as Ben Affleck in the DCU ones, and it was just like, oh come on, like, do you know what I mean?
Give us a breather, sort of thing.
Yeah. And it'll be really interesting to see where James Gunn goes with Superman. I feel like he will add that little bit of.
Yeah,
So which is there's a comic line? Is a comic line of Superman that he's.
So Superman Legacy is the one that he's meant to be doing. I think he's confirmed like Crypto the Superdog's going to be in it and stuff like that. I really don't know what he's going to do because, like you say, he's such a he's almost too perfect. So, someone who's like invincible, invulnerable, and what you do with someone who's like that, really.
Because this is the problem, not a problem. This is what I love. Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy works because of James Gunn, not because of MCU. If that makes sense. The fact
doing
that
his own thing.
It added the fact that them characters fed into the larger story, but Guardians of the Galaxy works because it's James Gunn. If that makes sense.
The standalone though, those 3 movies really you could probably watch, couldn't you? They are you could watch them and follow them all through. Three quite through, I think. I don't know what he's going to do, to be honest. I think it's he's being brave. I think taking on Superman first. I think if you're getting the DCU job, you could start off with a few not mediocre, I want to say mediocre characters, but lesser known characters, but to dive straight in and go, right, the first one, I'm not only going to write it, I'm going to direct it, and it's going to be Superman. You're brave. You're brave, because if you get this wrong, that's it.
Yeah.
I think
in a weird way, he's like, I'm going to have to address the elephant in the room, so let's just do it.
Yeah, possibly. And, he's, by all accounts, huge Superman fan. I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have went first, because like I say, if it doesn't work, he's signed on, we know the kind of the rota for the next, I think it's like 5 to 10 years or whatever it is, definitely the next few years of DC movies, and if this flops, that's it. The audience just won't take it. I mean, a lot of audience have already, they're saying they won't come out because of the whole Henry Cavill thing. That's rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. The people who come out and said when Chris Pratt got Super Mario voice, shouldn't be it's now made like 500 million. It's like the biggest film of the year.
Oh,
there's other examples where
there's only like a group of these men who sit on their keyboards and on Twitter.
But they will go see it. That's my point, though. The people that say they won't go see it because it's not Henry Cavill will still go see it. Yeah. But what it'll be under a lot more scrutiny.
Don't go wearing glasses with the side part on the other side of it.
Did you ever notice that Clark and it's a different side, isn't it? Clark and Superman's different side.
Which is annoying because you know how long it is to make sure your hair to go to one side.
Yeah, all right.
You know. But like that's how we must be Superman, because he can make his part go either way instantly. But I don't know. Right then, so where can we watch Superman?
So nowhere for free.
Yeah, we mentioned this.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's on Sky Store. It's on Google Play. It's on anywhere that you normally pay to get your.
I went
movies.
with the Apple one because it was the HD version was only £3.50 to rent it for the 48 hours.
Right.
And it looked lovely, by the way, really did. And that's the bit I do remember. That's the bit I did enjoy seeing it. Really well made, because obviously we watched it with crappy, great, big, massive wooden TVs.
Fixing our tracking on our VHS, probably.
Yeah. So yeah, it was quite nice to see that. Okay, then. So if you like Superman, what else will you like? I'm gonna kick this off. I've gone through a little bit of a theme for mine, David. I picked out, in homage to basically Superman making Christopher Reeve, I picked out sort of unknown actors who have been put in big roles, or unknown actors have sort of shone through in character. I'm going to go with a couple of Christophers to begin with.
Okay.
Christopher Mintz in Superbad, because he was complete unknown when he cast him in Superbad. He was sort of steals it. Unknown to Western audiences, but Christopher Waltz in Inglourious Bastards, like great casting by Quentin Tarantino.
And he wasn't young at the time when he did that, was he?
No.
Say not known.
A little bit similar for the Coen brothers to cast Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men, and yet you do not forget his character. I think really, and a big one, Danny Boyle for casting Dev Patel in Slumdog Millionaire. He was
brilliant.
I think he'd only done Skins on British TV before that, and he was like basically, and he and very similar. He's gone on to have that career, which is absolutely fantastic. Little bit similar to Christopher Mintz, Ken Jeong in The Hangover. He was like, babe, still practicing doctor at that point, wasn't he? So we brought him in. But you do not forget Chow.
No, unforgettable.
Or Community, which again you can watch and listen to our podcast about Community as well. And then being cast in big role, Tom Holland as Spider-Man, to carry that weight.
Well, when you say Christopher's, I was expecting you to say Chris Hemsworth and Chris Pratt.
I was going to go.
That's what because of the
I was saving that because actually I've got like Tom Holland as Spider-Man because he was big boots to fill. Yeah, and to come in because again Tom Holland complete unknown at the time, wasn't he?
He'd only been in. Was it called Impossible? Did you ever see that? It was a really good film with Ewan McGregor.
No.
It was about like a tsunami. It's based on a true story.
Oh, the one over in Thailand or something? Yeah.
He was in that. I mean, he was literally a kid. I think he was only about 9-10 years old. But like I say, it wasn't like a huge film, but he is great in that though. Also, and I think these are both big franchises. The Harry Potter, the kids, they would come. Like obviously they can only. You're never going to cast kids who are known, but I think it was really brave of them to pick. And I've also, you can't forget the original Star Wars domain, Carrie, Harrison and Mark to go with them. I did think of the three Chris's, but Chris Pratt was well known in Parks and Rec. To Parks and Rec fans.
Yeah, but he was on a national team. And again... I was over and on with the Chris's. We could have put them in there, but I just thought I just wanted to pick a few films that I really like, but with actors who were a little bit unknown. And we do love when an unknown actor's given a part, and then make it, and then that makes their career. The one on the list I would say to go back is Dev Patel in Slumdog Millionaire. Very similar to Christopher Reeve's scenario where it made him. Yeah. Perfect. So what about yourself?
I've gone with some superhero recommendations. We're talking about Superman the movie, so you can't not mention Superman 2. Superman 3 is not... is very memorable because of that scene you were talking about. Superman 4 is instantly forgettable. I do remember, I did go... That is the only Superman film I've seen on the cinema, though. Because Superman 4 came out when I was maybe about 10, I think, maybe. But definitely went to see Superman 4. I tell you, I went to see it in the old Cannon by Lime Street.
Oh, yes.
Remember the old cinema on the corner?
I remember going...
Cannon?
Yeah, it was.
I went to see it there.
I think it was in an ABC at one point as well. I remember going to see Labyrinth.
In there.
And I also remember going to see the Care Bears as well.
They couldn't have been two completely different movies, could they?
I do remember going to see Care Bears there, yeah.
So Superman 2, definitely. Invincible, which is on Amazon at the minute.
Yes.
Obviously, it's an animated series, but I just think as a superhero origin story, it's unbelievable. Obviously, Iron Man. Got to go with the original, the first Iron Man. The first Black Panther movie, I think, is brilliant. Batman Begins, we mentioned the Nolan trilogy. Christopher Mintz finally pops up, Kick-Ass. Again, another origin film. And then just purely because it's got superheroes in it and it's absolutely nuts, The Boys, which is currently on Amazon. But then the other category I've gone with is movies or TV shows where the character has to live a double life.
Yeah, it was quite... When you said this before, it's like, ooh.
So I've gone with Michael C. Hall as Dexter. Because obviously Dexter's the blood splatter analyst and also a serial killer. The Americans. Have you watched that with Matthew Rhys and Kerry Russell, where they're Russian spies?
Never seen it. I know which one it is, yeah.
Again, living a double life. Bryan Cranston, Breaking Bad.
Oh, yes.
You know, Heisenberg is the Heisenberg's the alter ego, isn't it?
Yeah.
I noticed as well, Bryan Cranston was in season 7, episode 2, The Governor Dunstan of 30 Rock.
Excellent.
Yeah, so you should watch 30 Rock as well, just purely for Bryan Cranston. Banshee, if you watch that, with Anthony Starr, who's in The Boys as Homelander.
No.
He basically kills a sheriff, and he ends up pretending to be the sheriff in this like sort of southern town.
Oh, that sounds really familiar, actually.
Yeah, it's really good. It's brutal and it's violent, but the whole thing about an alter ego is that he's someone he isn't really.
Yeah.
He's a criminal playing the sheriff, and obviously Hannah Montana with Miley Cyrus. How could you not mention Living a Double Life without mentioning Hannah Montana?
On that note, Dave, that was Superman, and watch it if you can. This was a Watch It If You Can production, executive produced by Kenny, our Val's lad, on Wake Experience.
Don't forget to follow, rate and share from wherever you get your podcasts.